In sports, the scoreboard doesn't tell the full story, but Netflix does. Stories about dads who happen to be world-class quarterbacks and a battle for the heart, soul, and direction of the multi-billion-dollar business of F1. Whether you're a diehard fan or you're brand new, Netflix has the stories for every type of fan. You can watch these incredible sports stories like Quarterback, F1 Drive to Survive, Untold, and many more now on Netflix.
Need a holiday gift that will keep her sparkling all year long? Right now, Blue Nile, the original online jeweler, is offering 30% off select jewelry. With experts on hand 24/7 to provide guidance, you're sure to find the perfect piece. And now there's even more to love about shopping at BlueNile.com. For a limited time, get 36-month special financing on minimum purchases of $1,000. Restrictions apply. See BlueNile.com for details. That's BlueNile.com.
Apple Card is the credit card created by Apple. You earn 3% daily cash back up front when you use it to buy a new iPhone 15, AirPods, or any products at Apple. And you can automatically grow your daily cash at 4.15% annual percentage yield when you open a high-yield savings account. Apply for Apple Card in the Wallet app on iPhone. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility. Savings accounts by Goldman Sachs Bank USA, member FDIC. Terms apply.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.
I'm nervous because it's like my first pod since then,
It'll be all right. We can always restart if we don't like it.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Serie A Chronicles podcast. It's a brand spanking new podcast with me, Mina, Rzouki, and of course, Nicky Bandini. We are reunited. And not just because, we're fabulous friends who love Italian football and use it, and it is our profession, but because we have a chance to debate, we have different ideas. This is all going to come across as we go through what is, in our eyes, the best European football league. And there is so much to discuss going through Roma and Mourinho's 1000th match. There was obviously the brilliance of Milan against Lazio, Juventus and their demise. Can Napoli win the Scudetto? Do we ask this question every year? I really don't know. But I have to introduce you to Nicky Bandini, my co-host. Hello, Nicky.
Mina, I'm so happy to be back doing a podcast with you. I've missed you. We've had this amazing summer for Italian football with Italy winning the Euros. And then I don't know about you, but I sort of had this, because we had like a season and a half of football rolled together basically because of COVID. So we had a season and a half of football and then we had the Euros, and the Euros were incredible. And then we, I anyway was like, all right, some time off now. And then next thing you knew, it was the new season was starting up again. And we didn't have our old spot to chat and to do this. And I'm just so excited that we've got a new spot where I get to come and see you every week and talk about it. Because I have to say, I know this is going to sound like I'm just sort of puffing up the new thing we're doing. Oh, it's a new podcast and it's what we're trying to sell. But it's not. Like, I'm just so excited about this season. It's such a thrilling set of narratives that are already weaving together in this Italian football season that I'm excited to talk about them.
I also thought that, here's the thing. I'll be really honest with you. Like you said, it's been like a year and a half of football and, and everything packed in together. And you just kind of felt like we didn't have a summer last year because it was just like, obviously, Champions League. Everything was happening during August, and then this all happened. And then the Euros, obviously, Italy reached the final. We were both like spectacularly impressed with that and so happy with that. But we were also
spectacularly busy with it.
Non-stop, exactly. Yeah. And there did come a point where I thought, I'm not entirely sure that I want this to be my life anymore, that I'm just constantly like pro football. I was missing family moments. I just felt like I really needed a holiday. I just felt like this can't be my life anymore. Like I have to figure out a way of just, finding this all together and the game is nice and everything. But like, I'm getting older, And then I watched the game, and then I had this chance to do something for work and go away to Monaco and explore other avenues for work and all of this business. I was like, yeah, for sure. I didn't care that it was going to miss the first 2 games of Serie A, not necessarily watch every single, or as much as I can. I'm not going to watch every single one, but you know what I mean. And I was like, yeah, this is all good. Sat down, first weekend where I'm watching all these games, watched Juve, watched Inter, Sampdoria, laughed a little bit. And then, Milan, all of this, and then Roma, Sassuolo. And I just thought, oh my God, I love this game. I mean,
it sucks you back in. I think what you're talking about is like super normal, by the way. I think like this last year and a half has been so weird because it's not really just about the football. It's about the fact that we've consumed a lot of the football we've consumed, sat on our own at home because of lockdowns and in empty stadiums if we've been in stadiums, and it's been so different. But then I think it was already happening, and I think probably if we'd done a podcast in week 1, I would have been exactly the same, really. But I think this weekend was definitely a weekend where you're like, oh, this is football. This is what it is. I know we're going to start here, Mina. José Mourinho running down the sideline at the Stadio Olimpico. The place, I mean, first of all, just that on its own, right? Up until the spring, who would ever have imagined Mourinho at the Olimpico as the home manager? But running down the sideline, he's got his fist up in the air, he's got his mouth open, the Kurfasud is going crazy. I don't know how you don't get a little bit swept up in that, and I'm sure part of that as well is just the mythos of Jose that we can all sort of have a love-hate with sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. This is what sucks you back in. It is that childlike celebration that he referred to afterwards when he was speaking to everyone, saying, I was trying to tell myself that this doesn't matter. But it was also El Shaarawy's goal. I'm not the world's biggest fan when it comes to El Shaarawy. I'm always a bit like hit and miss. Sometimes the guy can be phenomenal. Sometimes you're like, do you really want him on there? But wow, that goal, the excitement, the amount of opportunities that Sassuolo created and didn't take, them tripping in defense that made me think, oh my God, this is all De Zerbi all over you. This is so annoying, And there was so much emotion that I felt watching that match that I thought, God, I forgot how much I love this game, and I don't really care if my life is this for a while yet. I'm not ready to give it all up, but this is weird because I loved Paulo Fonseca's Roma. I thought that they were so tactically sophisticated. They were versatile. He was really raising those kids. They were a nice team. They weren't sort of that team that I associate with like Nangolan and Strootman and just characters that I didn't love at the time. It just all seemed a little bit antagonistic, With Fonseca, I just felt like there was so much tactical variation. I loved Mancini, Ibanez, the Smalling coming back and being that man, at the back. Dzeko up front, obviously Lorenzo Pellegrini, what a terrific player. But they did miss that mentality, and how much we discussed that when they were losing to all these big teams and a lot of that pressure that came with it, of course. And then you thought, okay, Jose Mourinho is going to come in, but there's still a lot of work to do. The guy's not going to win straight away just because he's Jose Mourinho. And the guy's winning straight away.
Well, so yeah, let's sort of lay out some of what the big picture is here. So Mourinho is now 3 games into his time at Roma, because of course we've missed 2 rounds. 3 games into his time at Roma, he's won 3 out of 3. This is the most recent one, beating Sassuolo. I think anyone who watched this game in real time would have thought, for a significant part of the second half, Roma were not going to win this game. It was absolutely helter-skelter in the second half, but it was a real, cliche alert game of 2 halves going on, because the first half was actually very cagey, I thought. Really sort of crafty goal for Roma, where you have a Pellegrini doing this gesture to the back post at a free kick, saying, over there. Even Tammy Abraham in the middle is gesturing over his shoulder, going behind me. And then Pellegrini plays this quick ball along the floor. Cristante reacts to it. It looks like it's probably something they've pre-planned. The whole defense is caught flat-footed, and Cristante just has the easiest goal of his life because no one has gone with him. And that was sort of the first half. The second half, Sassuolo equalised. Lovely, lovely goal. Domenico Berardi, who, by the way, thought he was on his way out to Sassuolo for most of the summer, was trying to get out of Sassuolo, starts his first game of the season, does a wonderful turn to Slep Juricic to make it 1-1. And then just chaos for the remaining half an hour. Just end-to-end chaos of Roma pouring forward. Tammy Abraham hits the post. At the other end, Rui Patricio, who's another of the big summer signings for Roma, makes two outrageous saves. I mean, one of them with sort of really the end of his toe. Was that from Berardi or am I mixing that up? Anyway, end of his toe save. Had another one from Jeremy Boga when Boga's clean through. Chaotic. And in the end, the fact that Roma got the winning goal, it did feel a little bit incidental, right? Like it could easily have gone the other way. And even Jose said that. Jose in his post-game comment says this game could have finished 6-0 or 7-0 or even 2-1 to Sassuolo. So he wasn't saying this was brilliant. So I still don't know where I am with Jose's Roma. I'm excited by Jose's Roma, and I think that maybe is enough for me right now. Whether or not I believe Roma are all set for a title challenge, I don't know. But here's the things I like. I like Tammy Abraham a lot up front, a lot. I think his physicality all through this game again was so important, forcing defenders onto the back foot. I think that he gives that attack a completely different dynamic. Pellegrini obviously is becoming next level. I think he's really kicking on and he's so important in that midfield. And the thing is that the intangible, and that I think that is almost like the thing that hangs over Roma as well, is I like this Mourinho. It's fun Mourinho. And Mourinho is like this when he's making substitutions, like even throwing El Shaarawy into the mix late on and saying, all right, then, we're not going to shut up shop. We're going to say, Sassuolo want to come at us, we'll come at you. That's all fun and brilliant. I don't know if I think it's a title-winning team yet, but I am enjoying watching it.
I don't know if it's a title-winning team yet either, so I agree with that.
I think title-winning is probably a bad bar to set for it, actually. I mean, Roma haven't even been in the top 3 since 2018, so that's probably top 4, sorry, 2018.
Okay, are they a top 3 team?
So I think these are the expectations of the ownership, right? Ownership wants to be in the top 4. They've spent close to 100 million euros this summer, really in a quiet way, by the way, because until Abraham came in, it didn't seem like a lot. But ownership expectations and perhaps needs are top 4. I think the fans, low-key, would be just as happy with a Coppa Italia because they haven't won anything since 2008.
Roma fans are never happy with anything. I mean, it's got to be a scudetto, surely, you know? I mean, or at least like, you know, a good challenge. Do you know what I mean? I don't think they could be like, oh, thanks for this Coppa Italia.
Roma's just prodding the Roma fan base right away in week 1.
Hello, here's your Coppa Italia. You know, thanks for Mourinho and everything else that you guys have got. I don't know.
I don't know if that's true. I think Roma enjoys.
I wouldn't be happy with the Coppa Italia, and I even if I was like supporting Sassuolo, if I'm honest with you. Yeah, but here's the thing, yeah, like obviously we can't judge it yet because I thought that it was very close with Fiorentina too. There's any opportunity at that game as well that I thought Fiorentina could win that. You know, you're right about Tammy Abraham. I didn't expect him to acclimatize to the situation so quickly in Serie A. But you know what I like most about him is I feel like he really takes on instructions very well and then puts that into, executes it. So I love him, but I really also love Shmurodov. I think that,
what a revelation.
He's wonderful. And the way that he is so generous in his play in the final third, and obviously with his assist as well. He is one player.
Did you think that was an assist, though? In general, yes, I agree, generous. But did you think that was a deliberate assist, or do you think he was just trying to bring it down and it fell to El Shaarawy and he said, all right, that's happened?
No, you're right. I do think it's like, it's sort of nobody thought El Shaarawy was going to take that goal, right? And I agree with you there. But what I love is that he is somebody who plays in the final third. He is somebody who engages with everyone, and he's smart like that. And then when you have him and Tammy Abraham, both really intelligent, young, good players, I feel like there's a lot of room for growth over there. I'm going to disagree with people. Everyone was saying, and I'm even disagreeing with Mourinho here in the sense that I think Sassuolo offensively are more sophisticated at this point. There's more variety to their play. I do love that Dionisi is making them, that they can possess the ball, they can be vertical. There's a lot of, there's just a lot of different ways that they can hit you, right? But overall, in terms of absolute balance, where your offensive is, where your attack is clinical, and where your defense is pure, Roma were better. I think that it for me.
I have no idea where our listenership will be at with teams like Sassuolo. So just to say, Dionisi, Sassuolo manager, he's in his first ever experience in Serie A. He was at Empoli, got them promoted, and then hopped over to Sassuolo because that vacancy came up because Roberto De Zerbi headed off. And I know Mina has never been De Zerbi's biggest fan, so I'm not surprised that you've got some enthusiasm for them.
And you can see the remnants of De Zerbi as well. So De Zerbi was very much loved and very much credited for, for the jump in quality that we've seen. We've seen like also Berardi, Locatelli. There was a lot of the national team that De Zerbi had a hand in, He is a very good coach, the way that he motivates, the way that he spoke to his players. His tactics were always offensive minded, always, good with the ball. But to be honest with you, Sassuolo has been very good when it comes to building this wonderful team ethic and a group of directors in general. They were very successful with De Zerbi or Di Francesco as well. Roberto De Zerbi came in, continued to work, perhaps even bettered it, I would say. They do take a lot of risks at the back, can I say? Yes. And Dionisi had come in pre-season, and he was wanted by a lot of clubs. Let's make that clear. And he left Empoli, and they were very upset when he left Empoli to go to Sassuolo and to begin this adventure with them. It seemed like the right fit because he's a very interesting, obviously, coach, plays very exciting football, but he's a little bit more vertical than what De Zerbi is, and a little bit more pragmatic sometimes defensively, which is what I liked. And he said, there is a point where I will tell my players that if you see somebody running towards you, you don't always have to construct everything from the back. Sometimes it's okay to just hoof the ball if you're scared. And it was just that touch of pragmatism that I was like, oh, thank God. It was like Zidane for Real Madrid. That was something that he really made sure that they understood, like, guys, do the basics really well. It doesn't matter. If you're scared, just hoof the ball. It's fine. Like kick it out of play. I don't care, but just do that. They're not doing that.
It's a very opposite of De Zerbi message. De Zerbi was very much like, we're going to pass it out. De Zerbi's a purist.
Yes, and let's take risks, and you'll learn from your risks. And they're both two points of view that can, you are good, because Gattuso did the same with Napoli. Like, I don't care if you make mistakes, let's keep going so that you won't make mistakes. But listen, players will make mistakes because pressure from another team will always, for me, will be too much. And sometimes you need to have the option of not doing the right thing all the time and just doing the basic thing. I'm happy with that. So this is why I like Dionisi a little bit more. Obviously, we haven't seen much of him, but my issue is that there are still defensive mistakes there. And this is something that he can't remedy straight away. It will take time. You can see his imprint. You can see the tactical variety, especially going forward, which I think is very interesting. But they have and take too many risks at the back. And so in terms of extreme balance, Mourinho has really made sure that they are very tight, Roma, at the back. I'm not saying that they don't concede chances, but Sassuolo don't score theirs. And here's the thing, they have almost as many shots as Roma on goal, but have only managed, 4 goals? And interestingly, when you look at other teams that have a lot of shots on goals and haven't scored, Empoli, Dionisi's former club, of course, they are under new management, but you know what I mean.
That's a really interesting one to watch. I'm actually really fascinated by their attack because they have this, obviously Berardi, who stayed, they talked about, but they've also got this little large alternate options between Raspadori, who obviously scored his first Italy goal, and then Scamacca, who's a giant. They're so different, but they're both like young Italian forwards who are exciting to me. But I don't think that people wanted to talk forever about Sassuolo, even though I could talk for a while longer.
Yes.
I think we've talked about Roma. I think we have there was lots of huge games this weekend as far as I was concerned, but I think we need to talk about Napoli against Juventus, Mina. I think we need to talk about it because there's a few different things we could come in on here, and I definitely want to talk about Napoli and I want to talk about Koulibaly, but I think probably we should start off by spinning it from the other side and saying, Juventus, how many times since we've been podcasting in the last few years together, Mina, has it been about Juventus? And suddenly the league table looks like the opposite of about Juventus. They are 1 point from 3 games. They found a way to sabotage themselves pretty hard against Napoli, with Szczesny dropping the first ball, the ball at Politano's feet for the first goal, and then Moise Kean coming off the bench and basically nearly beating Szczesny himself and giving Koulibaly quite an easy tap in for the winner. So Juventus were 1-0 up against Napoli and lost 2-1 is this, because, I can't speak for you, Mina, I can speak for myself. Before this season started, we watched Inter lose some of their biggest players, and we saw Max Allegri come back to Juventus, and sure, Ronaldo left, but we thought maybe it was time for that, and I genuinely thought this team is the obvious favourite, even though there are other teams I'm interested in, the obvious favourite to win the league. Is it that I was wrong and lots of other people were wrong? Is this growing pains? Is Allegri actually out of date and he's not the right man? They've made a mistake bringing him back?
Oh, don't even say these things.
What's the situation? I'm asking questions.
Weirdly enough, I'm not that worried. I'm not worried because I think there's been a lot of change. And I think what Allegri has come back to is not what he arrived to the first time around when it was Antonio Conte's Juve. And he could sort of take that on board and slowly build and slowly leave his imprint on the side and turn them into the winners that they became. Always winners, but European winners now. And yes, I do think that I imagined. Here's something Gazzetta wrote. Put your hands up if you thought that you were going to just trash everyone going forward. Because let's face it, Max Allegri was in charge, and I was like, yeah, that was so totally me. Like, I'm putting my hands up. I totally thought it was going to be Juve and Allegri all the way. Because let's be honest. I mean, I love Italiano and I love Stefano Pioli, but Max Allegri is like wow for me.
Yeah.
But I think that what we didn't sort of take on board was how much work there was to do. I mean, for so long, it was interesting listening to Mari Susari's comments after Milan Lazio, which we'll get onto, which talks about how they had to change and how to defend from the front. Allegri played a very specific style of football, and it was a continuation of Conte's work. So in essence, a lot of those players played the same style of football for very, very long. And it was focused a lot on pragmatic reasoning, and tactical adjustments, reading the climate and adjusting to that. And I think that what happened afterwards is we had two coaches, from Sarri to Pirlo, obviously, that changed things and wanted to be more creative, to push the team forward, to defend from the front, and not perhaps fall back on these things like a deep, compact, low unit that sometimes Allegri likes to play, right?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. I mean, they were very, very low against Napoli, like I was like, I mean, any point here, all standing next to Szczesny, but it's going to take a while also because he's without his South American contingent. So there wasn't, Dybala, there wasn't Alexandro, there wasn't a lot of, Cuadrado, for example. He was without Dybala. I think that he chose this match to be sort of defensive-minded and try to take their chances. It was a pragmatic reasoning. I always understand why he decides to do the things that he does. And I think that when you look at Napoli in the first half, the tactic worked, right? But when they could bring on the likes of Zielinski and Unas to change things around, who did Juventus have to really look at the bench and think, yeah, this is going to make a huge difference right now? There isn't a director in midfield. There wasn't a Dybala to bring on that could change everything for them. The team isn't very, very good. I'll be honest with you. Matthias de Ligt, for me, I'm still crying about Romero going to Atalanta. Then the guy who went to Tottenham, he's going to become a wild star. And de Ligt is good, don't get me wrong, but he's not growing at the pace that we perhaps imagined he would, And Moise Kean is always fantastic to have back. Obviously, his error made a huge mistake. Szczesny, I've always had question marks about this guy because of the way that they defend when he is there. You can just tell that Chiellini and Bonucci don't trust him, which is why they sit back a lot closer to him than what they do with Buffon. There isn't that leadership at the back. And there's an error in the Champions League. Do you remember that against Porto? There's an error in the Euros for Poland when he scores an own goal. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Demiral did that for Turkey too. Juventus have a history of it in the Euros, But Szczesny, I don't know, obviously has been kept on board. He's being paid 7 million euros net a season with a long contract. Well, that is one of the reasons why they didn't go for Donnarumma. Allegri is no longer just the coach of Juventus. He's also a manager, which means he has an input when it comes to transfers right now. And to him, with such little money on board and the capital injection not being able to be spent until at least January or onwards, let's make the right choices. Locatelli is more important. Let's see what we can do. I would also I would always have brought in Donnarumma. I would have spent all my money on Donnarumma. So for me, that was a terrible choice because Szczesny is a problem. When Moggi bought in Buffon for a record amount of money, there was a reason for it. So there are individual mistakes. But again, like I said, there are also, you understand why it's not working and why it's not coming together and the absences. And when you consider all of that, you think Juve have time to recover.
Well, I think there's a premise that I'm not the first person to make this observation, but I think it's worth bringing in. Allegri's second season at Juventus, he had 1 point after 3 games.
Exactly.
I actually think it was not until 6 or 7 games that they'd even won 2, because it wasn't like it just stopped there. They had, I think their 5th game, they lost to Napoli as well, and they might have even had another draw in there. So actually, it wasn't even just 3 games to start the season. They started that season badly. Then they went on something ridiculous, like a 19-game winning run, and they won the league. It wasn't close in the end. They won it by 8 or 9 points. So some perspective for sure. I think there's one note in that's like my sort of contradictory subclause, which was in that huge winning run they went on, didn't Gigi Buffon set like a record for longest time without conceding a goal? And
bring me back, Buffon.
Oh God, don't say it, Mina. It could happen. We know he's not done yet.
I'm fine with it.
Just imagine him showing up again.
Give me Keylor Navas if you want, Donnarumma. Give me Keylor Navas.
Well, I mean, that situation makes me sad that Navas and Donnarumma are in the same team. I think there were other options that you could have gone for this summer. Look, I think even Milan have made a smart signing with Mike Maignan. I think he's a good keeper.
Yeah.
I've always had some reservations about Szczesny. I think even when he was being crowned as the best keeper in the league, which was people were saying a couple of years ago, I continue to say I had reservations about it. And someone was asking me last night, could they even at some point give Perin another look? And Perin is only 28, so who knows? But I do think, to sort of just focus on the Napoli game for a minute, I think you nailed it talking about like the low block. It's exactly what Allegri wanted to do. And I would say actually up till Szczesny drops the ball, it was a pretty boring game, but it was doing what Allegri wanted it to. He got the early goal, and he'd set up this block in midfield that was pretty well suffocating Napoli. He even had Kulusevski sitting deep in the centre behind the attack to sort of harass the bottom of their construction with Fabian Ruiz. It was not pretty, but it was forcing Napoli into areas they didn't want to work in, which weren't really working for them. That first goal comes a bit out of nowhere. Even a 1-1, yes, Napoli had the better of it, but I didn't actually feel like a second goal was necessarily coming. It just sort of happened. So I do think, for me, it's all still a bit incidental. My counterpoint to that is, if your idea is basically to wind back the clock, which is what it feels like to me. This is like you saying, this worked before, I can do it again. If your idea is just to wind back the clock, and your personnel in all the key areas is just a bit worse than what it was before, right? Because Szczesny isn't as good as Buffon. Chiellini and Bonucci are still there, but they're older. De Ligt, I still like De Ligt, but is he as reliable as that? You haven't got, I know you hated him, but you haven't got Pjanic in the middle of the park who can do some of that conducting. Is it going to be more of this? Are there going to be more of that? And that, I think, is going to be the big unanswered question. Simon, our producer, just jumping in with a little note that there have been some reports that Buffon could come back. Don't rule it out with Gigi. Never say never. I mean, I really couldn't. But I do want to, because we always do, Mina, and spend too long talking about events. I do want to turn this around. I do want to talk about Luciano Spalletti at Napoli with 9 points from 3 games. I identified them in my pre-season column of The Guardian as a dark horse to win the league. And I don't know that this game particularly is the one that I'm going to say, oh, and now I've proved it. But I'm going to qualify what I was about to say in a second, but I did say before the Euros that Turkey were a dark horse, and that was so bad that I already feel like this is a better dark horse. Like I've already done better. So look, I think Napoli have kept together a core of some of the best players of any squad in the league. I think it's astonishing to me that after all these years, Koulibaly is still there. He didn't have his greatest season last season, and that's probably part of it. But I really thought he would be gone by now. I thought he would have gone years ago for how good he is. And I think that while he's had his ups and downs, I don't know that he's come quite as far as I hoped he would in some areas of his game. I do think it was a really interesting contrast. You just talked about Juventus saying we didn't have these South American players, whereas Koulibaly, who was playing for Senegal 2 games, second of which in Congo on the Tuesday, changes his flights twice, gets back to Naples as quick as he humanly can, gets off the plane and goes straight to training. And you've got Spalletti before the game, before he knows he's going to score a winning goal, saying, God, if we could all just, take a little piece of Koulibaly and be more like him, the world would be better. And then he scores the goal. I like that moment a lot. And I really enjoyed Koulibaly as well. Another of those moments of just remembering what football can be when it's a stadium full of people. And he went and grabbed the camera afterwards and was taking photos of the fans. And he thought, in my mind, I was thinking about Totti and that famous selfie in front of the curva. It was, these are the moments that I live for. This is what makes me excited about football, is the human stuff as well.
I find it interesting that Koulibaly is always the one that decides these matches. I mean, 3 years ago, he scored the winner and it was like, yes, Napoli are still in the race. This is going to be so exciting. Buffon was devastated. 2 years ago, he scores an own goal. I'm laughing, thinking, It's always Koulibaly, right?
After Napoli came back from 3-0 to 3-3, then he was the one who got the one that lost
exactly.
the game,
It was Ancelotti's Napoli, and it was like this, and he's had ups and like you said, ups and downs, because I think he was tremendous with Albiol.
But
a little
isn't
less
that
so
true
with
though?
Manolas.
Big players, big games. Big players, big games. He shows up in those Juventus games one way or another because he's such an important player.
I don't know, because last season I don't think he had a terrific season, sometimes even in the big matches. But just a few things that I do want to talk about. Anguissa, I think, is just he's wonderful. I know it's one performance, so I'm not going to go overboard. But I just want to mention that in La Liga, when he was playing for them, when he was playing there, only Nabil Fekir and Lionel Messi had managed more dribbles than him. His work rate, his determination, his ability to listen to instructions, he, for me, made the game a lot more interesting. Another thing, just to go back on Juventus as well, is that Allegri is a man of substitutions. He's a man who watches the game and how it proceeds and then changes it with his subs. He didn't have the subs available, but Spalletti made the most with what he did with his subs, and he really did change the game for Napoli. Now, every year, it's not just you, it's everyone I know on Serie A, by the way, and every podcast and every TV show and everything, Gazzetta. Napoli are the dark horse. Napoli could win the Scudetto. Look at Napoli. And every year, what do they do? Struggle to sometimes even make top four. Okay? Yeah. And this is what really bothers me. We've seen them miss out very narrowly under Sarri, but really that is the last time that I saw them provide a real challenge. Okay? It sort of started to falter then, and then Carlo Ancelotti came in and built them and made them really fun to watch in Champions League. Do you remember that? And then against Genoa, you could even watch it in week 2. The drop of intensity in the second half. They start to be like, taking everything for granted. Against Venezia, jogging back to defend when it mattered because they think it's Venezia, This is my issue with them and will forever be my issue with them, because you can talk about Koulibaly's leadership, you can talk about Insigne, captain, wow, 400th game, congratulations. But there is something about them that I'm never going to be convinced about on a mental level. Something that I saw in Roma that made me so excited yesterday, something I haven't seen in Juve for a very, very long time, But it is that, don't you dare think you're going to get the best of me,
It's Luciano Spalletti. We've got Spalletti. He takes his shirt off in the Russian winter. He's a different. I
haven't seen it in all 3 games that they've played this season. I've seen them drop. I've seen them take things. Maybe not. So he has a lot of work to do as well. I think they've done well. Obviously 9 points. But I have not been blown away by any of their performances. So, and I'm not judging this based on, a win against Venezia, because frankly speaking, my grandmother would have won that first match against Venezia. Yeah, so Venezia is different. I really love Zanetti. This is not a blow on them, and I do think they can grow. But it was their first match with a bunch of players missing, so much changes. So obviously it was going to be an easy win for them. And still, they barely took any of that seriously. So... But
Mina, I've missed your hyperbole.
I also just want to mention something. I hope Spalletti can change this, because Napoli do not deserve to be a team that, are they going to be 3rd, 4th, 5th? They should be a team that always guarantees you spectacular performances. Mm-hmm. And for me, I hope they become that, because they deserve to be that, because of the construction of the squad, because of how good they are at identifying talent like Anguissa, like Osimhen, who's so fun to watch up front, And so they should really be more than this, but it annoys me that. Lastly, I do want to mention something. So Juve Napoli got 16 million views, I think a few years ago. It got, when Ronaldo was playing, it got, 6 million views last season. and it's just got 1.6 now. If you don't think Ronaldo makes a difference.
Oh, we're talking about the YouTube highlights?
Yeah, YouTube highlights.
Okay, yeah.
I mean,
Ronaldo makes a difference. Of course he does.
It's just remarkable when you look at the different amount of, like viewership that Serie A got. And when you see that how many records were hit in the Premier League yesterday on Saturday when Ronaldo played for Manchester. So we really, we miss Buffon on a very sporting level. We miss Ronaldo and his goals, but my God, we miss his viewership even more. So I'll leave it at that before we move on to another set of champions.
Yeah, well, we're probably half an hour into this show. I mean, I have no idea. We always talk for too long, don't we? We're probably half an hour into this show, and we haven't spoken yet about the reigning champs, Inter, who new manager, of course, Simone Inzaghi, had a pretty nice start winning their first 2 games. They've come back from the international break and they've drawn with Sampdoria 2-2. They were twice in front. I think my takeaway from this game is probably it's slightly more of a human one than a footballing one. I think these games after the international round are really hard to get too caught up in. I think that if anyone is looking at the league table now and going, they've dropped 2 points, they're getting carried away. But
okay, but do you think Inter, you can give them that alibi? Inter, based on what you saw in the match, do you think they deserve an excuse?
Well, I think they threw away the lead twice, which is pretty sloppy.
Okay.
I don't think it was a great performance. I think that personally, I was, if we'd been doing this podcast 2 weeks ago, I think I would have been there saying, all right, but do I really think that Edin Dzeko, even for this sort of encouraging start, and do I think that Edin Dzeko is as sort of reliable an element as Romelu Lukaku? Do I think that I'm about to say nice things about him, but do I think that you can sort of drop Bastoni and have Dimarco come in and not lose anything defensively? No, of course I don't think that, because those are really good players. Bastoni's still there, he just wasn't available this weekend. But I do want to talk about that Dimarco goal, because he was he's an academy graduate at Inter who was first in their youth system at 5 or 6 years old. So when we talk about academy graduates, that can mean a lot of things, right? That could mean that you were spotted at 15 and signed for another academy. This is an Inter kid who started with the really little ones and came up all the way to being making his breakthrough with the senior team under Roberto Mancini. So we're talking about 2014. It's a long time ago, making his debut for the senior team. And since then has sort of repeatedly been sent away to Empoli, Ascoli, Parma, Sion even, in Switzerland. And comes back periodically. He came back under Antonio Conte and played, I think, a total of 25 minutes across 3 games, and then got sent out again on loan. And finally, he gets his first start for Inter. And halfway through the first half, he scores this free kick that was tracked at 70 miles an hour or something, which he just wellies into the top corner. And it was such a wonderful moment, and unfortunately undermined by Inter not playing that well afterwards.
Do you think that, I'm asking because I think that free kick was something out of this planet, and I'm a big fan of it.
It was incredible.
And Ivan Huric has done such a great job with him. I can understand why he was so upset about being in charge of Verona, because every time he creates somebody, they go back to their teams or whatever it is, yeah? But do you think they lost something in terms of defensive solidity when it wasn't Bastoni and Skriniar and De Vrij? That trio that understands their role. So
that's the best back three in Serie A. It is. So, of course, is my answer to that, really. Yeah.
So here's my issue with Inter. I had tweeted out something on May 28th that I actually put on my Twitter right now, which is something about me not trusting Inzaghi about one thing. So I'm never really good at judging how well a player will do or grow or whatever. I just see what I see, and sometimes I'm like, yeah, I think he's rubbish, and then he becomes great. I'm still right about Dybala, but I'm just wait and see. Yeah, but you know what I mean. But one thing I do really have an obsession with is coaching. And my only issue with Inzaghi is that I think that from a tactical sophistication, I love his Inter side. I think they have so much more unpredictability than Antonio Conte's team. I think going forward on an offensive level, there's so many more nuances. It's making up for the loss of Lukaku. There's a lot more engagement from everyone around the team. I think there isn't that just one, or two basic tactics. I think Eriksen elevated the game a lot as well for Antonio Conte. And towards the end of his reign, it was a very good team, but perhaps not the most exciting team to watch. Yeah. But I love his side so far, and I've loved their performances. My issue has and always will be that game on the 8th of December, because I was in Dubai. I had left a meeting early to watch the Champions League game between Lazio and Club Brugge. And then he decides on the 70th or something minute to take off Ciro Immobile and Luis Alberto in a Champions League match, because he was like, you know what, we've secured the 2-1 victory, we've got the 2 goals, they can come off, it's fine. And then they really had to hold on, okay? And I thought, if you're going to be that team that doesn't qualify, I'm going to kill you because it's in your hands, And he just completely destroyed that team because it was substitutions. And this is a side that usually does really, really well in stoppage time. They got all those goals when they were challenging before COVID hit, and then they fell apart, when they were always a side that managed goals in the 90th minute. His subs were really irritating me. And that game, I've never been able to shake it off. And it left me with a deep fear because he started to do it again in the league. And he did it this time around at Inter. 5 substitutions in 15 minutes. You stripped that team of any understanding or any identity that they would have created. It just happens. Even if you bring on Ronaldo and Lionel Messi and Mbappe, it's still going to shake up the team because they've lost the things that they've understood or how they've played for the whole game. So how can you do that? And then you left with Sensi injured. You're playing down to 10 men. This is your loss. This is your loss. This is all on you. And there is
draw technically, but yes, I take your point.
You know what I mean? Like, as in, you threw away. Okay, you're right. You threw away 2 points. They did get a draw. You're right. But it is that kind of, sometimes he takes things for granted, and it really bothers me with Inzaghi. And I feel like that is being transmitted to the team, because when you consider how much possession they lost, how easily they give away the ball, the type of mistakes they made, this wouldn't have happened under Antonio Conte. Tactically, I'm never going to be Conte's biggest fan, but in terms of mentality, he understands how to secure wins. And I feel like I don't want this team to lose that under Simone Inzaghi, because there was just this kind of lackadaisical, there was a Napoli edge to them at times, that, and I don't want them to take results for granted. And you can say this is, they've worked really hard. You're right. Internationals, they played more minutes than anyone else. But Simone Inzaghi actually is the coach that does the well after international breaks. He's only lost 4 of the 18 matches he's guided after these big breaks, So I expected better. I'm worried about them on a mental level. I hope that he is good enough to ensure that they provide that tactical sophistication, but maintain that mentality that saw them win everything. And this type of sometimes dropping tension or whatever it is the reason why Napoli haven't secured a Scudetto. And it could be the reason that Inter drops it when you look at what Milan can do.
Yeah, so I have a question I really want to ask you, which is like a snap question, which is like, do you think they can retain the title? But I think that to do that, we probably need to finish, and maybe we try and bring these 2 topics together a little bit, because I am wary of us sort of going too long, which we can do. But there's some teams we still haven't mentioned that also had interesting games this weekend. Milan against Lazio, which was a big game and which ended up being a far more straightforward win for Milan than I ever imagined it was going to be. We also then had Atalanta play against Fiorentina. Atalanta lost to Fiorentina. That was a really entertaining game. Interesting that it ended up being decided entirely by penalties, which I think was not necessarily reflective of the game, which was quite open. I think maybe let's try and bring all of these topics together and sort of talk about where we think those last few of the sort of big clubs are, rather than a sort of detailed, how did these individual games go? Like, where do we think those big clubs are in the sort of picture going forward into the title race, I guess, and the top 4 race. So I do think the title race is open this season.
Yeah, for sure.
And then also, I suppose, let's throw ahead quickly to the Champions League games as well, the European games.
It's interesting when it comes to Lazio, because I couldn't believe that, when I had to make sort of advice on a betting situation between these 2 clubs, I chose to go with Lazio win. And I'm not a fan of Mauricio Sarri. Never really had, I like him, but he's not a coach that I particularly love, but I'm a huge fan of Stefano Pioli, and I decided to bet against him. What a stupid mistake, okay? I don't know why I just took it seriously with the way that Lazio has been playing and the amount of goals that they've been scoring. Obviously, not taking into account it's Venezia and Empoli. It's not exactly like Inter and Juventus. So I assumed that, considering the fact that Milan had such a terrible home record, that potentially there wasn't, Giroud wasn't starting, he had COVID, that Ibra might not come on until the very end, that there were all these question marks hanging over them, that potentially this was a banana slip against a very attacking team. And Ciro Immobile, who has managed at least 3 goals every 5 games for Lazio, and I know he doesn't do it for the national team. It's a boring subject now because we get it, but he does do it for Lazio, So for sure, I thought this was going to be a Lazio win. Well, not for sure, but probably. And then you see the beauty of Pioli's arrangement. This team just continues to shock me because, you always sort of see them as being like a Theo Hernandez attack-led sort of, one side heavy, going forward, relying a little bit sometimes on Ibra to tie it all together. But right now, the players that are surprising me and the way that they are playing, they are a threat on every side, through Calabria, through Theo Hernandez, through the middle with Brahim Diaz. That midfield that was so reliant at the time on the partnership between Benacer and Kessié has now added Tonali and Brahim Diaz to it, and they just completely, it was almost like a snake dance that they did for Lazio, where those guys were just like, couldn't do anything. Pioli had completely neutralized them, but they didn't just neutralize Lazio's, Milinkovic-Savic and Luis Alberto and Lucas Leiva, but they also were the players that should have been neutralized. Everything that they did, the way that they contributed to both the attack and defense, the way that Tonali has so grown into this person that we
Tonali might be the revelation of this early part of the season.
Yeah,
Tonali is really
Gattuso Pirlo. He's a mix of both, right?
Yeah. I don't want to get ahead of myself with Tonali because I feel like I've already done that once and got burnt by it.
We did, yeah. And he deserves to be given time to develop into whatever he wants to be,
But he's been good. This is not the first game he's been good. He's been good for Milan this season, and I've noticed that, and I'm excited by it. I think when you look at that midfield, it's also interesting that, for instance, one other piece I thought was maybe not perfect for Inter this weekend was Çalhanoğlu, and Çalhanoğlu was brilliant but inconsistent for Milan, and maybe it'll turn out that is not such a big loss to say goodbye to him in the end. I loved Leao's goal. I thought there was so many brilliant goals.
Does Leao annoy you at all, though, or you always like him?
Oh, Leao's incredibly frustrating. He's in the same camp as Çalhanoğlu, as someone who I don't trust to be consistent at all. But brilliant goal. I love Ibrahimovic coming off the bench and doing Ibra things after he's given an interview to France Football where he says, "I'm as good as Messi and Ronaldo, and I don't need a Ballon d'Or. The Ballon d'Or needs me." And all these Zlatan things, and comes off and scores a goal, and he's still doing his stuff. But I was really impressed with Milan. I was really disappointed by Lazio. I thought it was so much less than I thought they were going to be in this game.
Do you think there is room for growth, or do you think he's too much of a change on what Inzaghi did?
Oh, I think there's
like 3-man backline, 4-man backline, pressing high up. He wants them to attack from the,
I'm not making any sweeping judgments on it. I think there's still lots of pieces of that team that can work together. I mean, Immobile had a stinker, and that was the other tiny note I had on this game was, of all the nonsense this weekend that went down, he gives away a penalty before halftime, and it's just a foul. He just kicks. God, was it Kessié or someone else? Kessié took the penalty. It was Kessié. So Kessié just kicks him in the back of the Achilles quite hard, and it isn't given. Then they go to the VAR booth, and VAR obviously awards it as a penalty. And I don't understand how, as a footballer, you can think you did it. Like, he has to know he did it, and they've gone to the VAR booth and they've come back, and at that point he's still arguing. I'm thinking, why? Anyway. But I think I'm not taking sweeping conclusions because it's still too early for me. And I'm reluctant to do this with the same with the other team. I do want to bring them in, Atalanta, because I was a bit disappointed with Atalanta this weekend, even though it was an interesting game. I think that team looks weaker to me. And maybe I was just being too influenced by Vlahovic, who I thought was brilliant, even though his goals came from the penalty spot. Great penalties, by the way. And I do want to get to that question. Mina, of the having said not getting swept away, the knee-jerk reaction, because we didn't get to do predictions before the season started. Who do you think is going to win this league? Who do you think is going to end up on top at the end of it?
3 games in.
I know, but we could have done it before the season started, and that'd be 0 games in. So you've got more information than you did.
No, because then I could go on what I saw in pre-seasons and I could just make a guess. But now that I've watched them, it's just who I think is going to win this league.
Yeah.
It's between Milan and Juve and Inter, right?
Interesting.
I don't know why. There's something about Inzaghi that I don't trust. I don't know. I hope he proves me wrong. I still believe in the best coaches in Serie A, and for me, the best coaches with a big team that can support their, obviously, otherwise Italiano is the best coach. Then it is Milan. I think probably Milan, actually, to be honest with you. Right now, from what I've seen in the first 3 performances, they have blown me away in each one. They are the only team that hasn't won by accident or in any way, shape, or form. I think that it's been comprehensively brilliant performances, whether it was Giroud last time, to Zlatan this time, to the brilliance of Calabria, who's got to be the best Italian fullback in the league, you know. I'm obsessed with this kid.
I know he's injured, but come on.
Spinazzola. Yeah, Spinazzola had great Euros, but before that, you would have thought Calabria is a better, right? I mean, now I would say Spinazzola is up there with Calabria, and they're both probably level. But just before the Euros, I wouldn't have necessarily gone to him as the best Italian fullback. But this is what Pioli has done with that team, and the way that he's just introducing different players into it and letting them all grow. If Leao can just be a little bit more consistent, because there's so much to his game that's beautiful to watch. It's only the end product. But it has to be Milan, right? Because I don't see how Juve is going to... I don't know.
It's really hard to know, isn't it? Because we sort of went through this decade of Juventus before last season. And there is a little bit in the back of my brain going, it'll still be Juventus. I haven't worked out how yet. It just will happen because my brain will tell me that. I really, but this is actually, honestly, this is the
okay, who's top 4?
This is what's so interesting about the seasons. I genuinely think this is the least predictable season in a really long time for the top 4. And if you'd asked me before the season started, I would have said 0 chance that Roma could win the league. 0, really 0. And now
you think they could win the league?
They're not my favourites, but it's not 0 anymore in my head. It's not 0 anymore.
Okay, can Fiorentina make top 4? Because they've been fantastic.
Yeah, they can make top. I think Vlahovic is probably going to be the best striker in Serie A this season. I think he's brilliant, and he's another one I can't believe he's still there. I really can't. I think he's magnificent.
In 2021, only Lewandowski? What are these wonderful stats that everyone keeps belting out on Twitter? You know, only Lewandowski, Haaland has scored more.
Yeah, I don't mean to say he's the best forward, because I think that, I have others in that conversation like Chiesa, but I think he's the best number 9, very possibly in Serie A right now.
Okay, before we get to Champions League and before we get to Europa League, just give me a quick top 4.
All right, I'm going to... Because I did predict them in pre-season, I'm going to stick with Juventus some way, somehow. Haven't worked out how yet. Juventus number 1, Milan number 2, and Roma number 3, and oh my God,
Inter?
Now I've suddenly got Inter and Napoli. I'm like, what am I doing? It has to be Inter. That the Inter can't come out the top. Inter can't come out the top 4. But I also, that takes me with Napoli outside my top 4. And if you told me today that Napoli win the league, I wouldn't be shocked. I really wouldn't. I think it's that open for me that 5th place in my predictions, I could believe win the league.
Definitely Roma. That means you're not counting Atalanta either.
I think Atalanta are going to take a step back. That's my honest feeling, and I would be delighted to be wrong about it, but I think they're going to take a step back.
They're right when Gasperini said that he thought another forward would arrive, because you can see that's missing from them, especially now with the injury to Luis Muriel.
Yeah.
And they never, replaced Papu Gomez, I guess, and Malinowski, Miranchuk are very good.
And Romero was brilliant last season. He was brilliant, so that is a loss as well.
Yeah, for me, I think I would actually fall off my chair if Napoli won. I would be hugely shocked. I think it would be, for me, more of a shock than Leicester winning the Premier League. league title, just because like they irritate me so much.
I disagree.
And I say this only because it was so easy to make top four. How could you have not done it last season? That
it's
stuff.
Gattuso. It's a different manager. It's a different era.
I haven't computed
I do think
this
Spalletti.
yet.
I think Spalletti is worth some points to them. I really do.
Let's see, because if Ancelotti is a guy who struggled there, I don't know if Spalletti is better than that. But I agree with you. I do think he's a very good coach. Okay, Champions League. Do we now think Milan have a chance against Liverpool? Because prior to the start of the season, I would have thought to you that is a clear loss for Milan, you know?
Yeah, so just quickly, why don't I just quickly skim down the Champions League fixtures? We've got Juventus away to Malmo this week, Atalanta away to Villarreal, Milan are away to Liverpool, and Inter are at home to Real Madrid. I think that's a pretty tough slate. Obviously, Juventus are expected to beat Malmo. The other three, I think, are all quite tough.
Yeah, but Malmo will get a draw like Nordjylland did, and all these other matches,
Juventus, wouldn't it? But I think Milan have a chance against Liverpool, but they're the underdogs.
Can Inter make it out of the group stage?
Oh, to get out of the group? Yeah, I think so. I think Pioli's got them in a really good place right now, and I'm really looking forward to seeing them play against Liverpool, actually, because I think
Milan. I'm talking about Inter before. Yeah.
I think if I go player for player down Milan and Liverpool's teams, their squads, if I'm being honest, I think it's a no contest. I think Liverpool have more talent. But I also think that there is still this sort of enduring underestimation of Serie A, and some of it, like the clubs in Europe, have tended to disappoint in recent seasons. But what's funny about that is that even in those recent seasons, while disappointing as a broad whole, there have been some really good performances in the most sort of high-profile games. Milan gave Manchester United 2 really good games just last season. So,
but they should have won that, considering Solskjaer's.
They should. And I look at a situation like how many people have bored my ear off, frankly, about Lukaku and wanting to suggest that coming to Serie A he had it easier. And now look, he's gone back to Premier League, and guess what? He's a brilliant striker who scores lots of goals. And it's, these are narratives that I would love to see dismantled a little bit. So of course,
Ronaldo didn't score in his first 3 matches in Serie A. Do you remember when it was talked about as maybe Serie A is really good defending? He scored 2 in the first match. In Newcastle, though I would score 2 too. But you know what I mean.
So I could imagine. I think Milan will get through their group. I expect Juventus. I think that all of Milan, Juventus, and Inter are good enough to get through their group. Atalanta, they've done it, better than the other clubs have in recent seasons. But I'm worried about Atalanta this season. I can't quite put my finger on it, but I think that maybe there's only so long that level of magic can be held up. I don't think they're about to fall away and finish 12th or something, but I'm just not sure they are quite in that zone they've been in for so long. But this week's games, tough games, and I would not be shocked if Juventus are the only Italian team to win this week. Of the Champions League teams. Europa League, there's also Lazio away to Galatasaray, Napoli away to Leicester, which I think will be interesting games as well.
Okay, so before we end this, and then I just wanted to go through if you had any snap reactions, quick judgments, anything you might want to mention about what you've watched. Can I mention one? Because for me, for Venezia...
Yeah, jump in.
David Okereke. I'm not sure I'm saying it right, but so this was a man who had come up. It was the old owner of Spezia that had started a school in Nigeria. He was part of that. Moved to Spezia, then moved to Belgium. Now moved to Venezia, and he had the game of his life alongside Thomas Henry. And there's a lot about Venezia that I'm sort of really intrigued about, because I think Zanetti has some really interesting tactical ideas. I wonder whether he can be my new Italiano. Let's not get carried away, because nobody can be Italiano. But I really want to see them. And I really, for sure thought Empoli were going to smash them, considering, the massive changes. But the way that they dealt with this challenge, the way that they had organized their block in the middle, I really, really am interested to see how far they can go. And obviously those 2 players are definitely worth going forward. So just a small one, because we're never usually allowed to talk about small teams. So I just wanted to mention that. What about you?
Yeah, well, Dionisi, same game. I thought Venezia Empoli was one of the low key sort of really fun games this weekend. By the way, I think I wanted to drop, because I know if we're going to have some of the audiences we've had in the past, there'll be some American audiences coming in. Gianluca Buzio came over from Kansas City, playing at Venezia. I thought he had a really impressive game.
Another one.
And is quietly sort of showing up for that Venezia team. Look, it's Venezia. It's not yet a Champions League team. Don't get carried away, please. But I think he's got exactly the sort of combativeness that a team in their position, newly promoted, is going to want to have in its midfield going forward. I lost track of the number of shots he blocked in that game. He really felt like he was everywhere in that shielding role in front of the defense. I felt like he was really all action and impressive and stood out to me. So he was one of the things I wanted to mention. I'm trying to think if there were other.
This was Venezia's first win for 19 years in Serie A.
Yes, Venezia just winning back in the top 5. Oh, and on the other side of that coin, the sort of slightly, if there's a team that's really worrying me in Serie A this season, unfortunately, is Salernitana, also newly promoted. They went out and signed Frank Ribery, made a big deal of it. It was very exciting, dramatic, ridiculous thing. Salernitana, Frank Ribery, whoever imagined that?
Yeah.
Marriage coming together, but they conceded 11 goals in 3 games. They lost the last 2 4-0. I think that is.
But I'm happy for Torino. I'm happy for Juve and Juric, So I think that I do think that Torino won't have the problems that they've had in recent years when they've been trying to avoid relegation. Obviously, Marco Giampaolo moving on between coaches and coaches. I think that this is a season in which they can grow, even though Juric is not happy with the transfer market. Perhaps we can toss aside all those problems that we've had with Torino. They can start being an interesting team. I do think it's going to be very hard to whittle down even top 6, because I think Fiorentina could potentially make top 4 as well. And I know there's Vlahovic and Castrovilli, and there's just so much to look at, because I think the coaching is such extreme strength at the moment in Serie A. And I know that the players and the superstars and Ronaldos and Lukaku's have gone, but I think if you just look at the sophistication of the formations and the way that the game is being presented to you, there's no more let's defend and try to just keep it all intact. Salernitana tried, but they conceded about 11. Generally speaking, I think there's a lot of fun to be had.
This was a weekend of unreal goals. I'm sorry, they were unreal. Like, you had both Inter goals were astonishing.
All the penalties were great.
Set up for Roma. El Shaarawy's against Roma. El Shaarawy's goal for Roma. Both Inter goals. I already say them. I can't remember just every goal. Okareke's goal. Even.
What about the disallowed ones as well? We've had goal line clearances. We've had everything you can imagine.
Yeah.
And we want you as a listener to take part. Tweet us your tweets. We will introduce a section in which we'll answer your questions. We'll engage, in whatever it is that you want us to talk about. If you have any ideas or you want to hear a little bit more about a team, this was a different show back then, we had to rely on certain topics to guide us through. And obviously there was Ronaldo and Lukaku, and things have changed now and we get to decide what happens.
Yeah, and that's like a broad thing as well, isn't it? Like, I think we'd really like to hear from you if there's things that you would like to hear more of in the show. Would you like some more nostalgia? Would you like some more like big picture questions rather than just week-to-week questions? Are those things that you would like us to do more of? This is our show now, so we can be more fluid and flexible. Let us know if you like this show and if you like listening to us talk about Italian football, what things that you would love to hear from with us. There's loads of places that you can do that. Obviously, follow Mina at Mina Rzouki. Follow me at Nicky Bandini. Follow the Serie A Chronicles Twitter at Serie A Chron Pod. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We would love it if you could subscribe and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts.
And tell your friends.
Tell your friends. But in general, I think we're just really happy if you want to come out here and listen to us chat about Italian football every week. I think that's it from us today, Mina. I've really enjoyed doing this. I missed you.
Me too. I missed you too. We only just need a coffee now and an Italian coffee shop.
Coffee and a gelato, and we'll be all set. And so, thank you for tuning in, and we will see you on the next one. Enjoy the week and hopefully some great performances from the Serie A clubs in Europe as well. And see you for the next one.
Ciao.
Sports Social Podcast Network.
Lucky Land Casino, asking people, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
Lucky? In line at the deli, I guess?
Aha, in my dentist's office. More than once, actually.
Do I have to say?
Yes, you do.
In the car before my kids' PTA meeting.
Really?
Yes.
Excuse me, what's the weirdest place you've gotten lucky?
I never win and tell.
Well, there you have it. You can get lucky anywhere, playing at LuckyLandSlots.com. Play for free right now. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+. Terms and conditions apply. See website for details.